Women in Film Happy Hour. We are women who write for film, television, and media. We believe that no story should go untold, and we want to hear your story. Now, let's join in for today's radio broadcast.
We want to be very sensitive to the subject matter that we will be tackling today, tonight in some areas. And we have no other than the lovely Nicole J. So say hello, Nicole.
Hello, everybody. Oh my goodness. Hi.
She's actually on the other side. She's on the other side of, she's normally interviewing. But now she's given me an opportunity to interview her so she can tell her story. And she's not, she's very popular on this at this time because it's October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And every month, Nicole J has been blessing us with her story to reach out to others to let you know that there is a way of escape and you can overcome. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Welcome.
So we definitely want to just go ahead and get in the show. We don't want to waste any time because we only have an hour to do it. And so we're going to get started. So thank you guys again for joining us. First, I want to go ahead and I got a definition I picked out for domestic violence. So there's so many things that describe what this thing is, but I want to read the one that I kind of liked the definition of how they put it. It says we define domestic abuse as an incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, threatening, degrading, and violent behavior, including sexual violence, in the majority of cases by a partner or ex-partner, but also by a family member or a carrier, like a caretaker. It is very common. In the vast majority of cases, it is experienced by women and is perpetrated by men. That is the definition that I liked about domestic violence. And there are a lot of things that we're going to be going over tonight. I'm going to be asking Nicole some very intimate and personal questions. Nicole, if it's going too far, just say, hey, just pump your brakes, and I'll do so. But in the meantime, I definitely want to give some statistics to our audience if I can, Nicole.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Sure. All right. So domestic violence statistics, nearly 20 people per minute. 2,000 people per minute are physically abused by any intimate partner during 1 year. This equates to more than 10 women and men. And I think it's 20,000. I don't think it's 2,000. I think it's 20,000. And I would definitely have to confirm it. But I think it's 20,000 because when I read it, I said, oh my God, that's a lot of women. So I think it's 20,000. 1 in 15 children are exposed to intimate partner violence each year, and 90% of our children witnesses domestic violence. Okay. 1 in 4 women experience intimate partner physical violence, sexual violence, stalking which impacts physical injury, fearlessness, post-traumatic stress disorder, contraction of sexually disease. Okay. 1 in 3 women have experienced some form of physical abuse, such as slapping, shoving, pushing, but in some cases those are not considered domestic violence. So in some cases, if the slap is too hard, I would consider it domestic violence because it hurts. But in some cases, they're not considered domestic. 1 in 4 women have been victims of severe violent beatings, burnings, strangling by an intimate partner in their lifetime. And this is the last, I got 2 more to go. So bear with me. So on a typical day, there are more than, I think this is where the 20,000 come from. On a typical day, there are more than 20,000 phone calls placed to domestic violence hotlines nationwide. Okay, so I think I was correct on the first one saying nearly 20 people per minute. So it is here where it says 20,000 phone calls come in nationwide on a typical day for domestic violence. And the last one is the presence of a gun in domestic violence situations increases the risk of homicide by 500%. That's a lot. So not 100, but 500%. And so today's topic, we want to be very sensitive on how we handle this matter, because if it's not domestic abuse, it can be something else that a person is going through in their relationships that's very toxic, that is very harmful. And so we know that, well, I've been told growing up that whatever we allow in our adult life, that we've somehow, whether it's good or bad, we somehow was inspired by it, or we witnesses in a behavior of some sort. So we either follow it or we mimic it. And so this is where we bring Nicole in. So starting off with the questions that we have for Nicole on today, we want to ask tell us about Nicole first. Tell us about Nicole, and then we'll go into our questions. Who is Nicole?
Who is Nicole? I am a domestic violence advocate. And the reason why I do this is because, when I was going through it, they didn't have these type of resources or people reaching out or explaining, the severity of being in a domestic violence relationship. So, and I made a promise to myself as well, that if I ever were to make it out, that I was going to make sure that no one else would have to go through this without hearing my story. And so I grew up at an early age in a small town in Texas. When I got in elementary school, I was going back and forth from Texas to LA. And then eventually, as a young girl, I moved to Los Angeles. When I moved to Los Angeles, it was a whole different ball game. I was exposed to a whole different type of lifestyle. Whereas in the South, it was more of a country type of living. Everybody knew each other. Everybody kind of stuck together. And then I moved to South Central California, where it was pretty much considered like a ghetto. And, a lot of gang violence, a lot of drugs, a lot of things going on. I felt vulnerable there. I felt alone there. I really didn't have family there. So it was kind of just me by myself. And I made a way for myself. I was very fortunate to go to good schools, and I learned, I got my education. I went on to college. I graduated from California State University of Los Angeles with a bachelorette in science. God has always blessed me with good jobs. I worked for Los Angeles Unified School District. I worked for National Cash Register. I, always had, banks, you name it. I was blessed. And then in my early 20s, God blessed me even more to be able to do something that I love. I am a writer, and I was a ghost writer on the Jamie Foxx show, as well as D.L. Hewley. And that was one of the highlights of my life. After all of the glamour, I ended up getting married. I have 2 children, 2 beautiful daughters, and I have a grandson, the love of my life. Everybody knows King. And I ended up being married. I was married for 13 years. I am divorced now. After my divorce, So I lived in Los Angeles, and then after I was married for 13 years, and I moved back to Texas. And so I ended up starting my own TV show, Real Talk Chronicles. And it aired for 2 years on PBS channels here in Houston. Then I kept feeling this urge to do something. And so I didn't know what it was at first. And, you know, the more we might watch the news, the more things, you know, are happening in the world. Mm-hmm. And it focused in on my past. Mm-hmm. And it really started from, you know, seeing young women being murdered due to domestic violence. And it took me back, Joan. It took me back to my younger years when it was happening to me. Mm-hmm. And I felt so fortunate. I felt fortunate to be alive. I felt fortunate to, you know, be able to tell my story because, you know, I kept hearing so much about, you know, young girls being murdered and young girls being in domestic violence relationships and can't get out. And I thought back to that promise that I made. And I eventually started speaking out. I started speaking out about domestic violence. I joined a few organizations here in Houston, and I started traveling all over Texas, telling my story. And I end up on a reality show. It hasn't been released yet, but I did end up on a reality show telling my story and going through the process of healing. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I am here now.
Well, we're grateful to have you, and we appreciate you so much for actually, you know, when you know, sometimes it's so traumatic, the things that we go through. We hate to go back and revisit to help someone else, but we thank you from actually coming back and helping, you know, those that are in need, and to, you know, let us know that there is a way out and there is life after, you know, those traumatic experiences. And so tell me, so how was life for you as a child? So in order for you to get in that situation, by you getting into that relationship and kind of staying there, what did that have an impact on you as far as your childhood is concerned? Did you witness that? Did you see that? Or?
Yes, I did. As a child, I was introduced to domestic violence at an early age. You know, I saw it happen a lot. I saw a lot of violence. And I believe later it ended up having an effect on me. But I think what mostly that was really, you know, that played a part about it was I grew up without a father. And when I say that, I say my biological father. Mm-hmm. And I just always used to think that if I had my father, I would have made better decisions. Mm-hmm. If I had my father, I, you know, probably wouldn't have ended up in that relationship. Mm-hmm. Going to sleep as a young girl and hearing screams, and at a very young age coming home and blood is everywhere, and having to move from place to place, you know, it was very traumatizing. You know, I really lived a hard, for a kid, I would say it was hard to see those things going on.
Okay. And so the first sign of your abuse, was it verbal or was it physical? What was the first experience you had with abuse?
For me, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the first time, no, actually, I was a teenager. The first time that I got hit, I was 18 years old, and I had just started college, and I had moved on campus, And my boyfriend, my abuser at that time, we had been together for 45 years at that time. So this was my first boyfriend, my first love, riding bikes together, having egg fights. It was what I called a very loving friendship relationship.
For 45 years, there was no abuse at all.
No abuse.
Wow.
No abuse. Until I got to college and I moved into my dorm. And I remember the night vividly. I mean, we were sitting down in my dorm and actually unpacking some of my things. And he asked me, you know, what are you doing later? And I said, oh, I'm going to a party that's going to be on campus and I'm going to hang out. And he was like, no, you're not. And that was the first time that it came to him telling me what to do, you know. And I was like, yes, I am. And he slapped me. And he slapped me really hard to the point where I started crying. I was in shock more than anything, because like I said, he had never hit me. And we were so close, and you know, the hurt just started settling in, and I kind of froze for a minute, you know, staring at him like, you know, I didn't understand what was really going on. And it was silent for a minute, and I kind of, you know, because he slapped me so hard, kind of like fell back on the bed. And so as I was to get up, he moved when I moved, and as if he's blocking me. And I'm saying, what are you doing? You know, you got to leave because you just hit me, you know. And at that time, my roommate came in, and of course, she didn't know what was going on, but she was coming in, moving her stuff. And so that kind of broke the ice. So he ended up leaving. And we didn't talk for a couple of days after that. And excuse me. And after that, your thought after that was like, it was like just a moment that he was, how did you make that okay in your mind? Did you say he was having a bad day, or this just happened once? How did you process that? Right. And over the couple of days that we were separated, I was thinking, you know, because I moved away and I moved into my own place, you know, on campus, I was feeling that he was feeling like he was going to lose me, or, you know, it was something wrong with him, you know, accepting the way our lives were going in different directions. And I just said, oh, you know, I kind of blew it off in a sense, because remember, I was only 18. And so I'm thinking, you know what, I'm going to tell him, you can't do that. And, you know, he's going to accept that, and that's going to be fine. Little did I know. And so after those couple of days, you know, we end up talking on the phone, and he apologized, you know, and of course I gave my spiel, this, you know, you're not going to be hitting me, you know, as if, you know. And so the next time it happened, it was at his house. And it was bad. It was really, really bad. I mean, we were outside, and he threw me in the ground. He, you know, took his fist and he was hitting me in my face, hitting me in my chest, pulling my hair. It was awful. It, you know, and the whole time I'm thinking like, oh my God, you know, what am I doing? What is happening here? I never lifted a hand to hit him back because I was so in shock. I was afraid. Afraid because it took me back to my childhood when I would see things happening. And if you did fight back, you would be hurt more severely.
Yeah.
So I think I had picked that up where I couldn't do that. I just wanted to get away from him at that time. I remember my lip was busted. I remember my hair was, pulled out in certain places, and I was dirty. And I remember
How did you hide that from your loved ones and your family? How did you hide? Did you stay inside until the bruises went away, or you became mentally strong again? How did you hide that from those that is closest to you?
I lied.
Okay.
I lied. I fell. I remember this is one of the most and one of the most embarrassing moments that I had was when I graduated from college. He jumped on me a few weeks before it was time for me to walk across the stage in college, right? And he broke my arm in 3 places. And when I went to the doctor, I begged the doctor, don't put a cast on my arm. Please don't put a cast on my arm, because my entire family was coming from Texas to see me graduate. And I had to walk across the stage. And so when I came home, my mom was like, what happened? What happened? And I said, oh, I fell out down some stairs, in campus, and I broke my arm. And
do you think when you've been abused and you're trying to hide it, do you think that your loved ones already know? They're just kind of like waiting for you to say it?
No, my mom didn't know.
Okay.
And my friends didn't know. I hid it pretty well because one thing about domestic violence is you learn to mask. You learn to hide things very, very well. Only person that I can remember that I really couldn't hide it from was my supervisor. My supervisor would, I think she used to watch me all the time. And when I would come to work, she would make little hints or say little things, and of course I would quickly shut it down. But to me, she knew that I knew what was going on, and she never straight out said it, but she would give me implications that she knew what was going on. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this. After the second and the third time and the fourth time, and to cause you so much pain, was there a pattern when he would actually hit you? Was there a pattern that triggered him? Something triggered him to do that, or that he just felt like when he was in a bad mood, he was just going to use you as his?
No, drinking triggered it. He drank a lot, and once he would get under the influence, I already knew that it was going to be a problem. And so yeah, that was definitely a sign that something was going to happen, is the drinking. Also, anytime I wanted to leave and go somewhere, that would start it. Without him, that was a problem. I remember one time I was getting dressed and I had my clothes all laid out. Remember, I'm in my 20s, so I'm trying to enjoy life too. I was doing well in school, and I had my clothes all laid off on the bed, and this was like my favorite outfit, and he just cut it up in bitty pieces. And
you wouldn't leave,
so I couldn't go.
Okay.
So I couldn't go.
And what did he say? Tell us some of the excuses that he used why he did what he did. Like, did he say because, you know, I was having a bad day, or there was a bad day at work? He never explained himself. What was his explanation?
You mean afterwards?
Yeah.
What he would, the apologies?
Yeah.
The apologies were, you know, I don't have anybody in my life. You know, he always made me feel guilty about his situation. Uh, you know, you're the only person that I have, and I did that because, you know, I didn't want you to leave me. I didn't want you to be alone. You know, I didn't want to be alone, or you know, I need help. He would tell me a lot. I need help. You know, something wrong with me. I don't know what it is. You know, it was always, you know, those apologies. Oh my God, I don't even know how it helped me so long. After I think about it now, you know, but yeah, he always had these, you know, you made me do it because you were trying to leave me, or, you know, it was always
And the excuse that
it was
reflected back to you that you were the problem.
that I was the problem, and you know, the clothes that I wear, if you you know, if you wouldn't dress like that, if you didn't wear those pants, you know, and you know, I wouldn't have done this. I mean, I remember one time I was at a club with my girlfriend Coco. You met Coco. And we were dancing on the dance floor, and I mean, we were cutting up, girl. And all of a sudden, I went flying across the room. And Coco was looking at me, and I could see all the fear on her face. And then when I realized what has happened, what I was kicked. He kicked me across the room in a full club. And then I saw him coming toward me. And she was like, run, you know, and I started running. And I remember the bouncers coming and trying to break it up in the club and everything. And some kind of way we got out of there without him catching me. And, you know, we got in the car and we left. And that was one of the times where I was questioned for the first time about what was going on. And I made excuses for him. And I said, well, it was probably because we were dancing with those guys, and the way I was dancing with the guy, you know, is the reason why he did that. And we kind of, you know, she reached out to me in a sense, and I'll never forget that, because she said, you know what, Coco, and that's my nickname too. We both had the same name. And she said, you know what, Coco, I really think that you need to leave him alone. I really think that he's gonna hurt you. And she was like, because what I saw tonight is that, you know, he's violent. And he, you know, because they couldn't calm him down. He was really trying to get to us. And she was saying, you know, this is the first time that this happened. And of course, I know it's not. And she said, so you don't want this to happen again. You need to leave him alone. And anytime after that she would ask me about anything, I would tell her no. You know, no, that never happened again. That was just that night. I believe it was because we were out, you know, partying, and he saw me.
Okay.
So yeah.
So after Coco found out, was there a sense of, I know there was a sense of embarrassment, but at that point you still remained, right? So at that point, was that love, or, I mean, what did you lose from all of the time he's been treating you bad? Now and someone else knows about it. What was the respect like for him?
Yeah. Let me tell you something about me being in this domestic violence relationship. I never stopped loving him. However, I did see him in a different light. Meaning, as far as respect, I didn't respect him anymore. I wouldn't disrespect him, but I didn't respect him as a man in my life. And what that looks like is that, I didn't want to go places with him anymore. I didn't want him to touch me. And I thought by me doing those things that he would eventually just go. And then I had formed in my head, and because domestic violence, and you read the statistics, it's a controlling thing. So I had it in my head that, you're going to leave him, but you're going to go back because you love him. And I believe that was some of the reasons why in the beginning I wouldn't leave. And then I kept wanting to go back to the old times, when we were friends and we went shopping together and we hung out, we went all to the amusement parks and we just did everything together. And so I was thinking we were going to always get back to that. And, coming out, finding out about his family history, because he came from a domestic violence family as well. And so, him saying, I never had, this type of love. I never had, anyone in my corner like you, and so it made me feel like he's going through something, he's going to get better, but as time started to pass, I became fearful of him. And that's the reason why I didn't leave. I was afraid, because you gotta realize once, I tried. I moved away. I've lived all over Los Angeles. When I tell you, from the Valley to Inglewood to the outskirts, Alhambra, Los Angeles, I lived all over because I was moving. I've left clothes, I've left furniture, I lived in hotels. I did it all because I was trying to get away from him. And because we had the same arena of friends, he knew where I worked. He knew my every move. And so he would always find me. He would always find me. And when he would find me, I would be so afraid, and I would go back.
Have you ever, so I'm quite sure you called the police for him before though, right?
Yes, our neighbors used to call the police. I remember one time we were renting this house, and the owner of the house lived on, like, right next door. And one day I went over there to pay the rent, and she said, I hear you scream at night. I hear you scream at night. And she said, and every time that I hear you scream, I'm going to call the police. And she was like, what can I do to help you? And I was just like, stay out of it. Stay out of it. And the reason why I was saying that is because this is when the abuse had got really, really bad. And I was afraid that he was going to kill me at this point. I was jumping out of cars. I remember one time, the most scariest moment of my life. We were in a car. We were in a Camaro, a 1989 Rally Sport Camaro, which is really compact in the inside. And he was driving, and I was on the passenger side. And I don't know where he got this knife from. All I know is the blade was about that thick. And all I could see was the blade. I didn't even see the handle. And he was like I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you, you know. And he kept saying that, and he kept swinging the knife in the chair, swinging the knife. And God was in that car. If I tell you God was in there, Joan, I was like Matrix. Every time he would swing, I would be moving and moving. I ended up jumping out of the car. And I wasn't far from one of his relatives' house. So I ran to her house. And when I ran to her house, you know, she held me, you know, and you know, put me in the house, and he came, and she wouldn't let him in the house, and she was like, no, and leave this car. That the car happened to be my car. And so he called his friend to pick him up, and she was like, okay, he's gone. And when we went back to that car, she held. When we went back to that car, Joan, and I looked at that passenger seat, and I saw all those holes in that car. And I just started thanking God that I am alive, because it was slit after slit after slit. I don't even know how it missed me. That's why I said God was in that car, and he gave me life. He allowed me to live. And you know, that was just it. That was kind of that was reality to me.
Jesus. That
I had to get out. And then I started, you know, what I have to tell victims is you have to have a plan to get out. But this was my breaking point. This is when I started planning on how I was going to get out. And at that time, I didn't know. I was like, oh my God, what can I do? You know, he knows where I work. He knows my friends. He knows everything about me. How can I get out? And later on, the way I end up getting out is I called my friend, a friend that I had since 7th grade. And I called her and I said, I need to move in. I said, I lied. I said, I want to buy a house, and I need to save my money, and I need to stay a room in your house. And she said, how long? And I said, give me 6 months to a year. And she said, you know, I said, talk to your husband, see what he says. She said, don't worry about that. You're moving in. And she gave me a room in her house.
Well, and she didn't even know that you. Wow. And
eventually, years later, I ended up telling her. But the funny thing about it is she knew before I did. She said, oh, he wasn't going to come over there with that. Oh, no, he wasn't going to do that. and
because the man was in the house, right? She was married. It was
married, and she, they didn't have that kind of foolishness in their life. And they wouldn't going to put up with that. And I moved there, and we worked at the same location at the time. And so I would ride with her to work, to and from work. Lunch, we went to lunch together. And I'm sure he was following me, but never gave me a problem.
Because he couldn't get next to you. He couldn't get you in that.
He would not do that. Not with them.
Has he ever been arrested for that, for domestic violence?
Not with me.
Okay, so all of those years he skipped the system. He never was arrested for it. So when the police was called, because I know you have to find out, it's different laws in different states dealing with domestic violence. So if you have, if they have a, like something in their name or a bill, or their name is on a house or something like that, they can't ask neither one of you to leave, right? They just tell you go sleep out and, you know, just go sleep.
Back then, I heard about that now, but back then, police weren't doing anything about that. He would leave. He would always leave before the police would come if someone would call the police. And they would, basically say, lock the door, don't let him in. If he call us back. I mean, if he come back, call us. I don't even remember them really taking a report, saying, or even questioning me, saying, okay, we're going to go get this guy. Tell us where he's hanging out at. Tell us something about him. I don't remember any of that, but I have to say this. A lot of times, the abuse it wasn't noticeable. A lot of times, like, I remember one time he bit me on my leg in a fight, and he bit me, and I had that mark on my leg for months. And I think that he had got to a point where he didn't want people to know, and so he would hit me in areas like my arms and things would be bruised, but he would no longer hit me in my face. In my head, he would hit me in the back of my head, things like that, but not in my face.
So when you broke away, and thank God you did, and thank God that he saved your life, because he could have killed you. When you broke away, how long, what did you do to now heal yourselves, now heal the scars and the mental, the PST, the post-traumatic stress, PTS, that you had from this traumatic? What did you do? How did you take care of Nicole after you got away?
Well, for a long time, I blocked it out. I said, you know what? I'm just going to forget about it. It's the past. I'm out. I'm not going to deal with it. And then I started years later trying to date. And I found out that I didn't trust men. I found out that I was angry. I found out that, I was in a bad space. I wasn't healthy. And so I did get counseling. I went and got counseling. And I started talking about it. Because you hold it in for so many years, and it becomes bad inside of you, and once you start releasing it, actually you feel better. You cry it out. I cried many nights, especially reliving the events. I've been choked to the point where blood and white stuff would be coming out of my mouth, and I played dead because I felt, if I would continue to scream or try to get away, he was going to kill me. And I remember one time he was choking me so bad till I had to play dead because I felt like I was going to die. And the only thing that I was thinking about was, wow, my mom, you think about family, my mom's going to be like, oh my God, I thought about, what people was going to say, and my family mostly. But I had to lay there and be still and play like I was dead. And I remember, waking up the next day and smelling breakfast. And it's like, you know, like it never happened.
Yeah.
And you get to a point where it's almost like you're just going through the motions. You're just going through the motions. I wasn't happy anymore. I would smile when I was with my friends, but the whole time I was miserable inside, afraid that when I go home, what's gonna happen. You know, it was some real dark times. Dark times.
You know, I think that, you know, when we were growing up, you know, our mama would tell us, you know, what goes on in the house stays in the house. But
Oh yeah.
we're living in a time now, it's time to come out of the house and get whatever is not, you know, is unclean outside of your house. Make sure that you get help for you and the children, because, you know, witnessing domestic abuse as a child, it can be very traumatic, just like you said. Like the triggers that you have that comes from it. Like one of the triggers I have is witch hazel. I can't stand the smell witch hazel, because, you know, when you had the black eyes, you know, you put the witch hazel on. And so you are so courageous to actually tell your story, and, you know, it just makes me want to just weep for you, because but I know I'm not gonna go there, but you are so strong to now reach back to others, because a lot of times we are witnessing domestic abuse as a teenager. That was happening way back then, and it's still happening where, you know, I can't imagine a young teenager, 14, 15, even 16, you know, actually portraying the pattern of their father, or what they seen, you know, to happen in their household. And it's just, you know, tell us about that event that you have coming up, and what is, I assume that this is the motivation why you go forward each year and do something on in the month of October.
Yes. And, you know, this event that I'm preparing, it will be October the 24th at Sam Wiley Park in Cleveland, Texas. And I'm so excited about this. And more so, the reason is because, you know, every year, like I said, I go around and speak about domestic violence. And I just feel like it's not enough. The word is not getting out. We're not watching out for our sisters. And that was one of the reasons why I named it Sisterhood Watch, is that us as women, we have to look out for one another. We have to listen to one another. And the only way you can help a domestic violence victim is to listen and help them prepare to get out. But if they don't have the information, if they don't have the support, they're not going to be able to make it out. And so it's up to us. You know, a lot of domestic violence victims won't even tell you what they're going through. You'll be a neighbor, you'll be an innocent bystander at a store, and you may see it happen. You may, you know, hear from a friend or but you're very seldomly are you going to hear from a victim say, hey, you know what, he hits me. And so it's our duty. It's our duty, because when you're in that type of relationship, and you're fearing for your life, and you're being controlled, and you're being abused, you don't think you have a way out. You don't think you have a way out. And it wasn't until my friend stepped up and let me move into her place that I felt secure. And so this event, I want to put the word out. I want it to be an awareness day where we just, you know, get all this information about domestic violence, where we listen to stories to inspire others to get out, to inspire others to help, and support victims. And I'm going to have some poets there. And, you know, I think poetry is words of the soul. And, you know, if you hear, you know, what it does to families of the victims, if you hear what it does, you know, just the innocent people that listen to, you know, just the other day, one of my friends told me that a 19-year-old girl was murdered by her boyfriend and the father had to bury her. And I said, 19. And I know it's happening, and it's happening more so now than it was then. But 19, you're just living. You're just starting your life. Who knows about love? I mean, you know, can it be? The young lady that I am honoring on October the 24th, her name is Brianka McBride. She died by her boyfriend that she only was with for 8 months. They didn't even really, how could you even really know somebody 8 months for you to kill them? One gunshot to the head at 25, murdered, gone. And this is why I'm so inspired to tell my story. I'm grateful to be here. I was in those spaces where my life could have been taken. And they're not here. They're not here. And they can't speak. And they were taken away from their family. And so I owe it to them to speak out. You know, I owe it to myself. It's a self-healing. This is healing to me. You know, it used to be a time where I couldn't even tell my story without crying. And someone told me, you know why that happens? And that happens because you haven't healed properly. And so, you know, now I'm focused more on the awareness and trying to stop this monster. Because if we don't stick together and we don't speak up and speak out against domestic violence, it's going to continue to happen. We're going to continue to lose women and now men. We're going to continue damaging our children. We're going to raise a generation of abusers because it's a learned behavior. You see it happen, you're going to perpetrate that. 9 times out of 10. And so it's time out. It's time to say no more and break the cycle. And that's why I'm doing it, Joan. It's because I'm going to do everything I can to try to break the cycle.
And we're standing there right with you to break the cycle, and we say no more.
No more.
No more. There's so many resources today, whereas that, you know, they're actually helping, like everyone that actually calls in a hotline or go to a shelter, they're doing something today because they want to make sure you get out, especially like you said, doing COVID, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and COVID, Joan, since COVID, domestic violence has risen.
Absolutely.
Tremendously. And so, yeah, it's very important for us to get them the phone numbers. I mean, they have all kind of measures in place now. They have, you know, if you can call some of these hotlines, you know, once you get on there, they can get you shelters. They can, for you and your children, if you have children, they can provide shelter for you. Nowadays, they even give money, you know, for victims.
I was reading that EBT. I was reading that they would give you EBT. Yeah. To get on
yes. Transportation. You know, it's a whole lot of resources out there for domestic violence victims. We just got to get them there. We got to get them there. But if we don't have these type of awareness days and we don't have these type of conversations, then, you know, they're alone. They're alone in a situation that they may not make it out of. They may not make it out of. And, you know, one of the reasons why I do this too is I remember, you know, balling up in a corner and crying, you know, crying about, you know, how can I get out? Or what can I do? You know, and feeling like, you know, I'm just going to die. I'm going to die. And that's a horrible feeling, to have to live every day wondering if you're going to make it to the next day. You know, I think back one time when I was with my girlfriend and we were walking, and this guy was walking along of us, and yeah, he was trying to, you know, talk to me, and out of nowhere, I felt somebody jumping on my back. And I start screaming to my girlfriend, get this. I'm thinking it's the guy's girlfriend, you know, on my back and pulling me and hitting me. And I'm like, get this girl off of me. And as I turn around, it was him. And he drugged me into, he had jumped out of the limousine. So he was in the limousine. He drugged me in the limousine. And I mean, he hit me, and oh my God. There were other people in the limousine, and my dress was all up, and everybody could see my business. And he was fighting me. It got to the point where the limo was going, but it wasn't going as fast. I jumped out of that limousine. I scratched up my legs. And as I jumped out of that limousine, I rolled over, and I remember just looking at headlights. And I was almost hit by the car that was following the limo. Well, God, it was just the grace. I mean, just inches from my face, the lights were, and it was so blinding. I couldn't even see who was getting out of the car. And I was just reaching out, help me, you know, and I had scarred my legs up so bad. They were bleeding. And the guy picked me up, and he put me in the car. And it just so happened to be someone very close to my abuser. And my abuser jumped out of the limo and ran up, and it was like, get her out. And he's and the guys, no, she's not getting out. You're not getting her. You need to leave, or it's gonna be me and you. And that was the first time that someone really stood up for me. And I remember that drive home when he was taking me home, and he said, you got to leave him. You got to get out. And that stayed with me a long time. And I wish I would have, you know, really left at that time. But unfortunately I didn't. And, you know, the abuse kept going. And the breaking point was I had a child. I had a daughter. And I remember he came home, and my daughter was there, and he was ready to fight. And I told you earlier, I never lifted a hand to defend myself, because as a child, I saw that if you do that, you get it worse. So I was always fearful of that. And this particular night, he wanted to fight, but in front of my child, which had never happened. And that was my breaking point. I refused to let him hit me in front of my child. And I picked up a knife, and I told him, if you come near me, I'm going to kill you. And I meant every word of it. And I never stood up to him. And do you know that night he left? And that was the first time that I ever stood up to him. And I knew then that I had to leave.